Three, two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
Hey guys, this is Shady.
Shadybunny is joining us again for his, I don't even know how manyth appearance, like probably fifth at this point. Shadybunny with Fate to Karma, excellent arena player from us. We did our first co-op. I want to say almost 4.5 years ago.
It was I distinctly remember it, right? Because it was with Tinker Sharpstone
Yeah,
Oil and
GVG
the
had just come
Ogre.
out.
Yeah, for sure. No, that is more than 4 years ago, yeah. Damn.
So Shadybunny, an infinite arena player on the leaderboards all the time, and he's doing something really exciting for this double month leaderboard. And I'll leave him to talk about it. But this is making waves in the arena community here.
So I definitely don't want to take credits for the idea because Dr. Stein, right, my moderator and moderator for the goats as well, told me, "Hey, I think this would be really cool." So I don't know where he got it, or if someone else did it first, but we're doing a Twitch chat drafts leaderboard run. So 30 runs, no vetoes from my end. Chat just drafts the decks, and I do give them feedback. Like, probably wouldn't have picked this here, chat, but I do
Do you ever
limit my
stall? Do you ever stall until you get the right pick? Like until
Oh, no.
Okay.
I try to be as fair because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I can't be too biased here because if I wait for the voting, I'm literally just waiting for my guy to win now. So usually I'll say, all right, first the 75 gets it, or whatever the voting number is at, and it's going well. So like talked about the numbers a bit. I think we're about 7.5 average, like 25 runs in.
Yeah, and
So
you were
so
above
pretty
eight
good.
for like a really long time, up until like 20 runs altogether or something.
Yep.
I was getting daily updates from Stein, and and a nice feed of the interesting things that chat would pick and things that would happen. So this
They
is
are
keep
interesting runs. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is with chat entirely picking. Like if you guys watch whenever in the rare times that I do a chat draft, I do not have the integrity Shady does with Twitch random chat drafts. I would like not be able to control myself and like kind of lecture chat within the pick until they pick the other pick unless they really don't want to. This is all like very much just chat drafts. You end up with a deck. Chat has Twitch chat. I mean, they're your viewers, so they're generally well educated on how to do arena drafts, but still not drafting at the level that you would draft at. And sometimes they're just objectively wrong. Sometimes they're going to be like just have a different preference of how to do a particular style in a particular class. And so, how have you been making it work? Like whenever you get a deck that you're looking at and you're like, all right, this is kind of broken, like not fully broken, but just like not a deck that I would ever draft, right? Like
Yeah.
how do you go and then like get yourself into the mentality and play that draft and get a really good result with it?
So for me, the most important thing has been to not be too. So the way how I usually draft decks, the curve is really really important, and I mulligan for that, and I play for that. I play more aggressive, and I know I'm going to get there. When I'm playing let's say an archetypal chat deck would be like a triple shovel fist deck or so, right? Where I'm
Mm,
just like, all right, I have things, I have lots of things, like ravens, you name it, right? The ooh, cool,
right.
more stuff. The chat loves more stuff. That and Jades, right?
Oh god.
So whenever I have this mentality. Okay, I'm probably going to be a bit more on defense. Overall, I'll still be on offense versus a lot of classes, just because of inefficiencies and the way how people choose to make value plays instead of tempo plays. But whenever I face off against the deck that's faster, I keep in the back of my mind, okay, I'm going to have a bit more stuff than I am used to. So I have to make some good defensive plays. So that's been the main switch in my brain where I'm like, all right, you don't have to push face here, right? Like
Hmm.
you're normally your deck wouldn't have too much shovel fists right now. So
Yes.
that's been the main change where I
Just
try to mulligan a little bit more, you know in the way like, okay, how would you mulligan if you have more big stuff?
Hmm.
So not too aggressively.
So normally at the end of a draft, like if you were to average out all of your drafts, how much bigger is your draft after Twitch drafts it as opposed to how you would draft it? Because we were talking
I
earlier before, and we ran over
Yeah.
some like decks that you would draft and how aggressive they are, and they're pretty aggressive. I think they're like a step more aggressive than what I would do. Like I would want, we talked about like Scribe, I would consider a 7 drop, but otherwise 7 drops and plus, I would have 3 to 5. You are really trying to shoot for 3 in that slot or somewhere around there, depending on the class, of course. But for non-hunter, non-warlocks, we would go that high. And so from the sounds of it, it sounds like Chad is drafting a bit slower than how you would
It'll
like.
be super dependent. So I will say that after doing many drafts together, you can really see them going like, all right, Shady likes this, so I will draft it
Ah.
more. So we have almost gone too far. I will quickly touch upon the 6 flame imp experiment, where at one point I think we had 2 flame imps in a draft.
Hmm.
And the third flame imp come up, and you could almost feel this reaction of chat. Oh no, 3 is way too many. We can't do this. And then after the pick, I said, guys, I picked 7 flame imps. This is fine. So then, when it came time to prove that, they were like, well, you said 7 flame imps was fine, right? So they
Hmm.
picked every single one. So that deck was completely the opposite. It was super all in.
And how did that
What they
deck do?
didn't, yeah, it went 6 flame imps, 7 wins, I
See,
think.
so that's
Yeah.
okay. Like
Yeah.
not the best for Warlock, but considering the draft focus, which is to draft the most
I
flame imps
went
possible.
full, like super, like my mulligans were like, if it's not a flame imp, I'll look at it really hard, be like, can I afford to keep this, right? Like I went super hard for the flame imps. So I had like 2 or 3 games where I was like flame imp, flame imp, flame imp, like turn 1, turn 2. Super fun to play.
Nice. Okay, so Chad is kind of absorbing your draft style as they draft, right? And
Absolutely, yeah.
they're
So they are
obviously.
moving. Yeah, I noticed that I actually didn't answer your first question, like how heavy are they getting, but I couldn't answer that without saying that actually right now, they're maybe moving it a bit too much there.
Mhm. So
So
where do
it's
they
all about
start
finding
at?
balance.
Yeah. So where do they start at now that they're already
Yeah,
more aggro than you would want them to be by a little?
I would say it's not even always that the deck is heavier, but they go for the highest card quality over the pick that fits the
Mm,
deck more. That would be the most common mistake, if you will, or deviation from the way how I would draft. It's like, oh, this is a good card.
right.
We have to pick it. Oh, this is a good card. We have to pick it. And that's probably still the most common thing that happens right now. But that's normal because you're used to drafting good cards. And if on average you draft good cards, you're probably going to do quite well. It's just to take it to that next level, give that deck that little bit of extra spice. You're like, you know what, guys, the good card, not the best card here. We have to take the weaker card, but it's a really good fit for our deck.
Yeah, I know like the obvious ones are like, oh, you take another shovel fist instead of like a raptor, but you really do need just like a 2 drop that would help your deck a lot more. I've been noticing in my drafts this is going a lot the other way too. Like when we're talking about value, you're talking about things going maybe a little too fast, where sometimes chat doesn't recognize that we just like, yes, bog creeper is a terrible pick most of the time. It's over bucketed, but if
Mm-hmm.
the deck needs a little bit of size, adding that like 6 3 drop is not really necessary or particularly helpful. Adding something that's a little more size may be a little bit better. So I've definitely seen it go both ways. But I do find it really interesting that because your chat is I mean your viewership these days like are over 1,000 usually. And so this is
Yeah, the
not.
chat drafts are very popular.
Yeah, so this is not just all people who like know the arena super well and like are super hardcore with it, and as a collective they're still like shifting over the course of how many days have you been doing this?
Ooh, let's say little over a week, right?
A
Or maybe a bit more over a week. Let's say a week and a half,
week and a
2 weeks, week
half.
and a half.
So
Yeah.
in the course of a week and a half you've shifted the meta of your Twitch viewers from going too slow to going too fast.
Well, yeah, there was this I'm not gonna say I gave him a scolding, right? But it was this pick 2 Dread Infernal Haunted Creeper, slam the dread, and I'm just like, guys, no, this can't be, right? And then I just told him, like, well, look at it, because the logical argument that chat comes up with, like, Well, of course, the Dread Inferno looks bad now, Shady, but you didn't know we were going to get offered more.
Mm,
But the counter argument is that, well, I would be okay with a lot of haunted creepers,
right.
whereas if I have to pick 5 Dread Infernals, that's not so great for the curve. So early on, it's usually better if you have two strong cards to pick the early game one, because if you stack those, you're usually going to be in a better spot than when you're stacking big minions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and let's go down that like a little more specifically because I know I'm having trouble with this on my Warlock draft. So I've Warlock right now dominating the meta. HS replay says I don't know 56%, 57. I don't know anymore, but really really high. Everybody I talk to, everyone who just is in the arena knows Warlock king right now. But I
Yeah.
have yet to get even 11 wins with the Warlock. 10 wins was my top. And so I've tried it in several different ways, but one of the things I keep struggling with are these like large demons, right? Abyssal obviously always take or I don't know, maybe there's a cap, but I certainly haven't been offered enough for it to hit that cap. But it's things like Dread Inferno versus like Void Caller. Like how do you balance that, especially earlier on in the draft? Later on, it's
Mm.
easier to see like, oh, I don't have big demons, Void Caller not good. Or like I have a Void Caller, big demons, all really good. But how do you balance that in like your first 10 picks?
So I will say that, well, a lot of my experience right now is with chat drafting, right? I haven't too many solo drafts. So I usually don't get to pick Void Caller because my chat is very safe in that regard, where
Really,
I
your
feel like
chat
a
does
lot of
not pick Void Caller?
I have an amazing chat. Now, obviously, there are many people that want it, but the
Mm-hmm.
majority in the end will be like, let's pick the safe pick, right? Let's not, there's no guarantee we'll get it. So, and that is a way how I do draft. But I do think that at least for the chat drafts to get better, we need to add in a little bit more risk. So I sometimes would like the Void Caller, so I can definitely feel you there. But the decks that have gone, the reason why I bring up the chat drafting is that
Mm-hmm.
I don't have very much data on picking Void Callers because I
Right,
usually don't
right.
get them
Okay.
of my chat. But the decks that do well for me just have Evil Genius and a ton of activators for them. So don't skip Haunted Creeper, don't skip Possessed Villager, don't skip Void Walker, right? All these 1 mana things you can play. And then just curve out from there. And I have not been too big on Blast Crystal either. If I
Hmm.
get one, it's fine. Two is usually already a little
Yeah,
bit too many
I feel
for
you
me.
there. I always you
Yeah.
definitely take the
So,
second Siphon Soul over a Blast Crystal if you can.
oh yeah, I'm not even going near Siphon
Oh,
either. I'm
you're
just
taking the first Siphon Soul over Blast Crystal.
I haven't had a Siphon Soul in God knows how long. It's
Okay.
not a pick for me now. I just curve out with 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops. Then I shift into the mid game where soldiers are great, Yetis are great,
Hmm.
and then maybe 2 to 3 good things to play on 5, depending on, well, do you have Councilman? If you have Councilman, that might be a turn 5. So I'm essentially looking at, okay, how can I, because everything I play right now is pretty much aggressive.
Right.
So my Warlocks included, I'm playing them aggressive. So I'm thinking, okay, how do I survive their Abyssal? How do I survive
Hmm.
Flame Strike? How do I survive, any AoE that might be annoying if you're drafting a more low curvy Zoo deck? So something like Soldier of Fortune is amazing. It's got 6 health. The Dalaran Crusader is good to play. It survives Fellfire as well if the bubble is intact. And then, like we said earlier, if you get, say, let's say an Infernal and a Scribe for 6, and then an Abyssal at the end, you're good. That's fine for me. Like 2 6s and a 7.
Hmm.
If it happens to be 2 Abyssals, 2 6s, that's fine. If it happens to be 4 6s, no Abyssals, that's fine, right? Something around that number, just not too high.
Right.
And then, turn 9 or so, if I do end up with a Shovel Fist, that's not a problem. But then I probably don't want 4 6s and a Shovel Fist. Then it
Hmm.
gets a little bit too crowded.
Yeah, yeah. Especially with the Warlock, you got to push the curve a little higher.
Yep.
That's what, so your
Yep.
hero power actually does something. Yeah. Okay. So after Warlock, actually, before that, pause on Evil Genius because a core part of the strategy is triggering Evil Genius, getting all that value out of Evil Genius. Evil Genius
Yes.
hits a 1/1. That's like a free, like just tempo wise, that's a free 2 tempo value, and it's a free like I don't know 3 or 2.5 mana's worth of card advantage of value on top of that. So it's quite amazing. But in terms of the lackeys themselves. how do you like? Is there a strategy to playing those lackeys? Do you just hope the RNG gods go your way? A lot of them have
Yeah,
good tempo, right? Like, so do you use
I'm
them for tempo? Do
greedy
you
with the
use it, hold
lackeys. I
them?
think that's something I might see. Oh, we talked about it a bit earlier before the
Hmm.
show, and we're the way how you beat warlocks, because most of the time if a warlock gets an early evil genius against me, I feel like it's an incredibly tough game. I always say like, oh, the game's over. Obviously it's not over, but you feel like you're so much on the back foot. And then I get a little bit of a breather when I see them use their rush minion just to add 1 damage, the
Hmm.
rush lackey. I see them evolve, a cable rat, right? That's something you see all the time.
Yep.
It's not like that's terrible, but that is nothing compared to, oh, I just charged my Dark Iron Dwarf into your 3 damage minion and now I evolved it into a 5 drop. That's like, holy crap. Like, if you just paired those two lackeys in that way, you would have won the game on the spot. Whereas now you evolved the Cable Rat and you gave something +1 damage.
Okay.
So I see a lot of people not abusing just how they can be amazing. Now, sometimes you get, oh, I get the 2 drop summon one, and you get some extra tempo, and that's nice. That's strong, but it's not as devastating as, oh, I rushed my Divine Shield.
Yeah.
I always forget his name, right? The 5/4
The 5/4
into
dollar
your,
and Crusader.
yeah. I
Yeah.
charged my Dalaran Crusader into your Dread Infernal. Like,
Right.
boom, we're done, right? It's
Yeah.
over. Like, you don't come back from that. So it's mainly the rush one and the evolve one that I see people just horribly misplaying or just not taking enough advantage of. And when I get those, I'm usually sitting on them. And when you're watching me, it might feel like, you could have done it there, you could have done it here. But then there's this one turn where it's like, okay, now it's over.
Right.
So
See,
I usually sit on those a bit longer.
yeah, I think it's very interesting because we talk a lot about how much more aggressive you are when you try to be when it comes to drafting and when it comes to playing. You're hitting face more than you're trading. But when it comes to lackeys, you're actually holding out for the additional like value because they're
Yeah.
so flexible and because the swing potential is so big on these two particular lackeys. And I think
Yeah.
it's very interesting because otherwise you're like, oh yeah, we're going full tempo out, right? We got an extra mana, we got a lackey. It doesn't really matter if this lackey isn't doing much. It's at least adding 1/1 on the board. One more attack, an extra attack buff on the board. Like it'll be fine. But the way you're playing, you're actually holding on to them and using them for swing turns, using them for bigger swings. While the rest of your game plan is generally more tempo based, more hitting face based. Um,
Yeah, the philosophy there would be that while you might lose a little bit of tempo here or there,
mhm.
you'll gain it back on that huge
Right,
turn, and it'll be way worth it.
right,
Because
right.
you usually have something else to spend your mana on, or you float 1 mana, or you
Mhm.
tap, or so. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely something that I don't think I'm doing well good enough on. I think I have like evolved down, but when it comes to the rush one, there's just so few cards that have ever like given rush and in like a reliable way, right? Outside of those warrior cards, and warriors have
Mhm.
like endless initiative anyway.
And
So
yeah, and those cards are bad, right? When you're like, I'm gonna draft.
but yeah, but these lackeys are everywhere now. There's neutral cards that generate lackeys, and so holding on to that rush card for the big swing, I think that's definitely something I'm going to try to do more in my gameplay to see how it works. Because like lackeys are strong, right? You play an evil miscreant, it's game winning. Evil conscriptor even, right? Like if I'm looking at my 12 wins on Rogue, it's got evil the miscreants. On Priest, it's got evil conscriptors.
Yeah,
So it makes
just
sense.
lackey
On
generators.
Warlock, got to focus more on those evil geniuses and have to be a little more crafty with the lackeys. Um, okay, so going back to Twitch drafts, you're at a 7.5 right now.
Yeah, I can open up the. Yeah, so we're 7.5 on the dot.
Mm-hmm.
26 runs in. Sorry, so
Okay.
it's 4 more runs before we're at 30.
Okay. So you're going to end up somewhere in the 7.5 ish area. Your goal is like somewhere you said before, like 7.8 or something. How well do you think you would have done in this meta if you were to be trying like just really hard with no Twitch draft, fully focused? Um,
Hmm. Very dangerous question to
Yeah.
answer.
Because we've seen, like, you've been placed, like, have you been number one before? I know you've been number two at least, right?
Yeah, the strongest feat I have to my name when I tried leaderboard was that I did it on 2 accounts and I got number 2 and number 5,
Right.
but I haven't had number 1.
Okay.
No.
But
It's
what was the number you got when you hit number two?
oof.
Was it like, it
I
was like 8
I
point?
actually don't remember. It
Okay.
wasn't a 9.4 like
Yeah.
branded in my memory. Uh,
So I think it's somewhere in like the mid like 8 point whatever range, maybe like the high 8 point range, and this will be in the mid to high like 7 point range. Which, because I'm trying to figure out how much like pretty knowledgeable, but obviously not like pro level drafting team, right? Like of Twitch chat that also sometimes
mhm.
goes off the rail and makes meme picks for the hell of it. I'm sure every now and then. Um, will actually hurt the player, right? Like how much of the skill in arena is in the draft and how much is in the play. So the first thing to know is that, right, your Twitch chat is informed. It's not just random arena
Yeah,
players.
yeah, I'd definitely say above average when it
Yeah,
comes to
definitely well
chat.
above average. And two, they're actually adjusting to your draft style, so they're also somewhat responsive, although not like, well, sometimes within the same draft, but not within the pick.
Yeah.
And then the difference is about one win, probably less than one win, because I'm sure that particular like time when you got second is not like representative of every time you've tried and like a one set of 30 runs. So the difference, and I'm actually like, this is what I'm shocked by. It seems like it's less than one win.
I will say that it feels harder. Like I have a lot of. I would say this is where I lose the most efficiencies. Sorry, this is where I lose the most efficiency. It's when I get a deck and I'm looking at it. Man, this could have been such a gem, and then it gets 7 or 8, and then it's good, right? But I'm
Hmm.
thinking this that's double digits pretty likely, right? If we fix the curve up a little more, we get
Hmm.
this, we get that. So I think that's it. I think it's actually at both extremes. That's where most efficiency is lost. It's when the deck could have been something amazing, but there was too little experience to know that, oh, everything is aligning. I know we have to do this now. And chat's like, no, no, keep picking the good cards. I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. We have to go here. And then there's at the very other end of the spectrum, everything's falling apart. No, stop doing what we normally do. We can't do that. No, look at
Right,
it. We
right.
have two drops. This won't work. We need to shift it to something else.
Hmm.
So I think at those two ends of the spectrum, that's where that one win just
Yeah.
evaporates, because I can't, I've had a one win run and a 2 win run, and that's when everything falls apart. And then I've had a couple 7s and 8s where I think, man, this could have been double digit, but we lacked that extra spice.
Hmm.
So I think chat's really got the cookie cutter. Everything goes according to plan in the draft. We know what to do. This works out.
Right.
I think
So
it's now those other ends, right, where
yeah.
everything is not working out, or everything's working out really well, and we can't
Right.
capitalize on it well enough.
Within that normal bounds of this is what we normally see, chat knows how you draft, chat knows generally how to draft. But the times when you need to think a bit outside the box one way or the other,
Yep.
it's hard to get. And this is not a reflection on individual Twitch chat members, but like it's just hard to get a collective to all move in one direction without like efficient communication, right? Um, yeah, no, I mean I can see that. It's so okay. So we're at about like a little less than one win difference at the very top from drafting pretty normally, like we know what we're doing in arena, to like how Shady would draft. Um, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just because it's always you never truly know, right, how much of a difference a good draft makes versus how much good gameplay. Like I know some people think that like, oh, you could take like pretty much any deck. It's more like how much value Blizzard gives you, right? Like your actual drafting
Mhm.
decisions don't make as much difference. And you have other people who think your drafting decisions are like the deck, right? Like if I give the same deck to like three competent people who like pretty much know arena, they're gonna get reasonably similar results from it, and I don't think that's true. It's it's really this is such an interesting test because it's kind of answering that question. At something like 0.75 wins is the difference between a really good draft versus in terms of drafting decision making versus a draft by a pretty knowledgeable, like kind of like if you kind of just sleepwalk through a draft, right, you'll get something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So yeah, so drafting is still very important, even at the very top level. And the additional things in drafting, it is making a difference. But at the same time, it's not. It like when I heard Twitch draft, I was like, ooh, like, well, I wonder what the end result is. I would not have predicted 7.5 or anywhere near
Neither,
7.5. I would have been
neither.
like, you would
Absolutely
be
not.
lucky to get 7. I could see 7 happening, but 7.5 would be a huge long shot. And 8.0, I would have said was pretty much impossible. But it seems
Yeah.
like 8.0, like give it a, if you gotten a little more lucky, right?
Up
Like,
until that one win rogue, because that one win rogue happened 3 runs ago. So yeah, we were then book we fell off a bit.
yeah. And I mean that happens to everybody, right? Like I know when I was
Yeah,
going for the leaderboard, I had a literally a 0 win run, like in the middle of my leaderboard
hurts.
run, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna do this over again, so that's just gonna live there. And I still ended up being like, I don't know, number like 13 or 12 or something like that. So it's definitely it doesn't sink the whole thing, but it definitely hurts. Okay, so let's look a bit forward on this. What do you think? What do you think the best classes are in this meta? Right, like what's your chat gravitating towards? Because they know that this is for the leaderboard, so they're trying to
Yeah, yeah.
draft
So
pretty seriously. So what classes are
Warlock's
you
an
playing?
obvious one. Warlock's an obvious one.
Okay, Warlock on top, right, and then after
Yeah.
Warlock.
I would say for my chat, they go for Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause they know I like Hunter, and they're actually pretty good at drafting it now. I will say some picks I'm still like, ooh, like, I think 2 or 3 days ago we picked a fiery bat over a longbow, pick one or two, and I'm like,
Mm.
oh guys, no, 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 no. And that's the classic, like, oh, beast first of all, and good one drop or
Yeah.
hunter. We need to go aggro, right? I sort of had to like uh, beat that beast mentality out of them when they slammed the life drinker over a perfectly fine cart, and I'm like, guys, what is this? It's like, guy, it's a beast tree. I'm like, I'm aware. What are we picking this for?
Right. Where's
Like
the
for the dire
synergies?
frenzy, you're going to want to pick as well. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit too much synergy drafting sometimes.
So how,
Uh,
hunters in general. So let's focus on hunters. How many
yeah.
one drops would you like in a hunter? Like ideally in this meta.
So Hunter right now is I'll talk about the Hunter I have done, right? Because I
Yeah.
explained a bit that I want to mess around with this like Smork controlling Hunter,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
most
Because we've had
most
different things. I play a bit late, mid range. Like Collins was on here before and was like, "Yeah, full on control hunter. This is the time." And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, you got your new. I forget the name, but Mark Shot. You
Mark
have Mark
Shot, yeah,
Shot.
he
That's
loves
pushing
that.
very
Loves
heavily towards that. The new Unleash,
that.
right? Lots of value there. So now's definitely
For
kind of the time for late game. So what's your stance on one drops versus value, right?
Hmm. Yeah, for me when I'm drafting Hunter, my number one card is Unleash the Hounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me solves everything, and I've picked 3 of them and not regretted it. I 2 is definitely always fine. 3 I would say is a little deck dependent, but I'd rather have 3 than 1. Because it solves everything, right? We see that there's more lackey, or rather there's more bodies because of the lackeys. You can really exploit that by using Unleash. It can be rate, it can be reach in the late game, so it
Mm-hmm.
doubles quite nicely there. If I would have to lay out the hunter curve that I usually end up with, I would say it's 8 to 10 1 to 2 mana
Okay.
cards. So that's a little bit of a big range, but it
Okay.
depends on the quality of the cards. I will definitely not try to push it to like, oh, I need like a ninth 1 to 2 mana card,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll pick this crappy one drop. I'll almost never pick crappy one drops to meet that. I'll stick with drafting good 2 drops if I see them, like Haunted Creeper, Henchman Hogsteed. Those are no brainers. Two threes over 3/2s for me right now, very heavily, mainly because of Henchclan Hogsteed. Every time I play a
Mm,
3/2, I'm like, well, I can just get donked here and be completely off the board. And then it just curves out after that. It gets four-ish 3 drops, 4 to 5, depending on how many 5 drops I'm gonna get, because 3 drop hero power or 3 drop, 2 drop on 5 is fine. Turn 4, usually want at least 4 things I don't mind playing. So once again here, Soldier of Fortune is phenomenal. It's a
right.
6 health minion I can play into AoE later on. So it's
Soldier
almost
of
like a
Fortune,
pseudo.
under bucketed right now. Under bucketed to start. Move down a bucket, so even more under
Yeah.
bucketed. Probably going to
Um,
move down another bucket whenever Blizzard gives us the patch. So,
Not difficult for me to pick at all right now. So
mhm,
just slam dunk. And then turn 5, as I said, is a little bit turn 3 dependent. So they're hand in hand, because you don't want to have no turn 5 play, but you don't want to have 4 turn 5 plays and 6 turn 3 plays, because then it gets weird.
mhm,
Uh, so I'd rather have, say, 3 good turn 5 plays, 4 to 5 good turn 3 plays. That's sort of the flex there, I would say. For me, it's 3 to 4 5 drops, depending on what's going on with turn 3. And then, ideally, you call this like high main hunter, because you're curving, you're not going super, super aggro. So 2 high mains at the end is ideal. Scribe sort of doubles like that. It's not quite a high main, but it's still good.
yeah. Well, it's a
Um,
high main for bucket five, right?
Say again, sorry.
It's a high main for bucket five.
Yeah, yeah, very, very, very cheap high main. I've had hunters where you don't get either of those, and you end up with a violet warden, I believe is the name, the 4/7
Mm-hmm.
spell power.
Yep.
It's not good, but it's a thing you can play into AoE. It makes your rapid fire deal 4 damage
Mm-hmm.
total. So those kind of things. That's essentially the outline of most of my hunter curves.
Cool. So mark
Follows,
shot. Where are you? Are you taking your mark shots? Are you not taking your mark shots and focusing on the
I
more
yeah.
aggressive hunter cards?
So I will take Mark Shot, but I will not take it over Unleash the Hound.
Mm.
And
Okay.
the thing with Mark Shot for me is that it really reminds me of this control smorky style, where when you do draw your Mark Shots, you get to react to what your opponent does, potentially get more reach off the Mark Shot or another Mark Shot, and you get to hero power. So
Right.
that's sort of the way how the rhythm flows for me, where okay, you play stuff, I'm going to react to whatever you played, and I'm going to ping you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to play more stuff, and then I'm going to unleash the beast, kill that, and then I'm going to ping you again. So it's like slowly whittling them down. So based on how many mark shots you end up with, how many of them you draw, you can end the game a couple turns later, because the mark shot just delays both of you,
Right.
because it makes you not develop, but it removes something from their board. And if you can delay the game as a hunter without your opponent gaining that much more tempo, that's pretty okay, because it just means you get more pings in, more steady shots.
Right. Yeah, and that reminds me of your views when, like, last year when you were on the Lightforge and we did a co-op. I was like, you really turned me around on Explosive Trap as a
Yes.
card that is pickable in aggro hunter, rather than a card that is maybe pickable in mid-range slash control hunter, but generally just not a good card. Because it involves your opponent doing something stupid usually. But even without your opponents doing something stupid, it stalls the board, right? And you get more hero powers in, and that's reach, in addition to the 2 guaranteed reach it's going to do. And
Yep, yep, that's it.
this is like a more proactive version of that, for obviously much higher value. The card would be
Yeah,
is generally a better card.
super strong for that style, which is why I did a co-op with Collins, and I said, all right, Collins, you get to pick all the hunter cards, right? Because we started off and it went more towards what he would draft. And I would, like, during the run, I said, man, you're gonna hate this, but the deck you've drafted reminds me of that Smork deck. So I'm gonna take some of the concepts that you've been using, Collins. I'm gonna use them instead of for value for Super Smork. It's like, no, man, no, no, no. that way. Like he was trying to get me on the
Right,
infinite
on the
value train. I'm
infinite
like,
value control hunter
I was like, I
side.
see this, but let's add some explosive traps and kill commands and maybe cut down a little bit on the mark shots. And then I think this can work. He's like, it already works. I was like, yeah, but I want to go face with it.
Yeah.
So
The,
that's
the,
that's definitely on my list for next week. I will be drafting that kind of hunter and I will try to really, really make it work because it's
nice.
super enjoyable to play.
Yeah, definitely let us know how that works. What I've been finding a lot of success in for Hunter is freezing trap, which I had
Oh,
not
okay.
taken for like the last two metas because it was just not terribly great. It's bucketed really high for what it was, but now things that like the ability to flip and go face is a lot higher, and you get one freezing shot and you can make that happen. I found pretty consistently you can make it happen, and so I'm
Okay,
playing
I've been
Hunter like,
avoiding them, so maybe I should give it a go.
yeah, consider it. Is especially if you're looking to slow it down a bit. It's definitely not aggro hunter. But it's like late mid range hunter. It's not anywhere near as control as
Yeah,
Collins's
it's more high
hunter.
mani
Yeah,
hunter, right?
exactly. It's more
Okay.
high mania. It's more I'm gonna get enough stuff, and then you're not gonna be on the board at a certain point, and then it's all gonna go face, and you're not gonna be able to react to that. And even if you end up getting the board back, I've already gotten enough damage on you. I'm hero powering you down. You're like, I have some reach. You're done. So similar to your concept, but with consideration for freezing trap, it's so hard. Hunter has all these freaking amazing cards in the first bucket. I forget how many they have now. I think at one point they had like 14 before the rotation.
Yeah,
Um,
all the good stuff is mixed together.
yeah, and so one, it leads to actually very interesting drafts because a big problem a lot of the classes have is you get the same offerings over and over on the top buckets because there's not enough top bucket cards. But for Hunter, there's definitely, yeah, you look at the top two buckets. The top two buckets add up together to have like almost 20 cards right now. And this is
All the good
with,
stuff.
yeah, Unleash the Beast still hasn't been bucketed correctly yet. So that's probably, I think that's
Yep.
probably going to move up at least half a bucket into that group. But yeah, it's a really exciting time to play Hunter right now, guys. It's very good. There's a lot of different ways to play it, as you've heard. And
I'd say
this
it's
is
quite forgiving as well right now because normally you just run out of stuff, and the mark shot really helps you not do that.
mhm.
If you make wrong choice here or there, you're not completely out of cards to play all
Yeah.
of a sudden. No.
Other classes draw less. You draw more. It's kind of evening out. Yeah, it's a good meta to do all sorts of Hunter stuff. So let's talk about other classes. What other classes have you been playing
Yeah.
for the
So
leaderboard?
Rogue, I would say for me is a big one.
Hmm.
It's not that great for chat drafting. Just well, we did okay, and then we had two mediocre ones.
Hmm. Definitely one of the harder classes to draft.
Yes, right now, but I feel like it's really rewarding to draft it because when I do draft it solo, and every pick is made with the same goal in mind, it works out quite well. I think the main thing people are doing right now when they're drafting Rogue, or the main thing they're doing wrong rather, is they're pretending like they will still have that infinite value train with the miscreants.
Mm,
So it was very frustrating to play against Rogue before the nerf because obviously they had a lot of super strong cards, but it's not even the volume of super strong cards that bothers me. It's that they could do whatever and not run out of stuff, but still not lose because
right.
they'd have their saps, they'd have their backstabs, they'd have their SI agents, so they would get bailed out. And right now, you can't just do that. You can't just pick the value stuff and then also survive. So you need to make a choice. What am I going to do?
Hmm.
And for me, a rogue deck functions quite well if you're going very aggressive. Well, surprise, surprise, very aggressive, and you have just enough stuff to finish the game up on.
Right.
For me, a lot of my rogue 12s, the last couple games are always like, all right, chat, we're gonna set up 2-turn lethal, and then all my cards are gone. Right? We're just
Hmm.
like equipping a deadly poison at the end, and we're going face, and it's like, all right, so he needs to freeze our face and remove our board and taunt or whatnot. And then they can't do that, and they lose in the end. But had that gone on for one turn more, I would have lost. So a lot of
Yeah.
my rogues look like that.
So rogues right now, definitely 2-drops are a good idea in a way that in the last meta, 2-drops and Rogue was like, why? Why would you do that? And I always remind my chat whenever we're drafting Rogue, like, Thistlety and Sprint, those are your 2 card draw cards as Rogue. They're in the 7th bucket. You are not going to see them. So anything in which you're relying on some value to happen in your draft, more often than not going to hit it. So back when the Miscreants were everywhere, they were kind of filling that gap. The Blink Foxes and the Miscreants, and now that they've actually micro adjusted Rogues down to a normal level, your Blink Foxes aren't everywhere. Your Miscreants are actually, I don't know. I think I'm still getting a healthy amount of Miscreants actually.
Yeah, at some point you get one, right? You usually never get 2, and you're definitely not getting 1 every draft, but it happens. It's not like you're, wow, I got a Miscreant. That's great.
It happens, and it's still under bucketed, so it's always very nice when it happens. But yeah, you got a lot less room for error in your draft if you're trying to get any kind of late game card advantage going. So I definitely
think
agree.
A good way to compare it is Fan of Knives is a decent card in this style, but it's definitely not a must pick every time, and you probably don't want 2 of them. Whereas if you're playing a little slower, Fan of Knives is amazing because we talked about how good Unleash is. So then, Fan is going to be good as well. The reason for me why Unleash is just a must pick is because it doubles its reach in the late game. So when you are being aggressive, it definitely still has its use. It's not just you're trying to flip the board with it. Defias Ringleader is another one of those cards that.
Oh, are you picking Defias now?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Which is why I picked the poisons, right? Like I have this, like I go aggro. So
that is hyper aggressive, Shady.
Yeah, I get to my turn 3 is like equip a poison, play 2 guys, right? It's really, it's quite nice.
So Defias is in the bottom of the 2nd bucket, which means it's been like pretty much over bucketed for like a long time now, but it hasn't been changing because people like picking it. It's one of the iconic rogue
cards. It's
definitely
not a must pick, no, but they find their way into my decks more than more than once every other draft. What's another specific thing with Rogue? The Bladed Cultist. It's pretty much always a pickup for me as well because my curve can support it. So let's say if you pick, this is another one, right? So Ringleader's already a reason to pick Deadly Poison, but if you're going to pick Bladed Cultist, suddenly you can coin Dagger, and then on turn 2 you equip the poison, kill their River Croc, play your River Croc,
right,
with the Bladed Cultist, and you flip the board, you're ahead. If they don't have a spider tank, if they have to play a 3/3, suddenly they're doomed because the poison will finish the job.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to play Rogue. It's very different than, like, we had Boozer on last week, and it's very different than how Boozer, and I think Boozer and I play Rogue pretty similarly, as like generally mid-range, and just like rely on the dagger as like a hero power, as like the the best hero power in the game to stabilize and kind of out mid-range people. Works less well against warlocks for the obvious reason that they can get back the board better than other classes, but it destroys Zoo Warlock. It's less good against warlocks with enough board clears to kind of get back. But we would all rate like Defias and Bladed Cultist and Deadly Poison like fairly low for its bucket. And for you, they're all like definitely pickable cards. Bladed Cultist actually, you said, was pretty much always pick.
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of the time I'll have 2 poisons as well, the way how the draft goes.
Right.
So
and because poison can go face.
Poison can go face, but it allows both those minions already mentioned to work.
Cultist and combos.
Suddenly turn 4 you can play Miscreant without a coin. That's also nice. At any moment where you're like, oh, it would be nice if I could dagger here rather than play the 2, you can do that, and then the tempo is stored and you just slap the poison on later for 1 mana, and suddenly your curve is so smooth. So I'd say it's just flexible, because I do recognize that Deadly Poison isn't an insanely high power card, but it's an extremely flexible card, and that's why I pick it. It makes the curve work.
Yeah. So this is like, it's kind of like Hunter now, where you have all these different ways to play the class. It's a really like opened up class compared to where it was in prior metas, and it's a really good one too. Like we have, like, I think every good player right now, or like every great player and streamer that I've talked to, Rogue's one of the top classes. Once you get past the Warlock tier, so there's many different ways to do it, and that's good to see because I haven't actually tried that aggressive. Like for me, ringleader was just like written off and has not been on my radar. If they lower the bucket,
I
I'll think
find a way
about it
right out
again.
of there.
But yeah, but I never gotten so aggressive that I would ringleader. And in fact, I played so mid range that when for the run with I think I got 12 with a rogue like a week or so back, and it had two evil miscreants, and I made a point like halfway through. I'm like, so far we haven't had to coin evil miscreant even once. We've always just found it more useful later on rather than earlier. And so I kept that up for the rest of the run, and it worked because you do give up some kind of tempo when you play the evil miscreant, and when you don't have the tempo, like because I'm not going as aggressive, it actually helps to not lose the tempo that you do have. You don't have like that much to spare because I'm like relying on dagger on 2 some of the times. If I have a coin, I'm almost always daggering. I'm like coining out a 2 and then playing a dagger most
I
times.
agree. Yeah,
So
that's something that happens for me as well. Where if I can coin a 2/3 into a dagger over
oh,
coining
definitely,
miscreant, I'll do it absolutely.
yeah.
I think it's the same mentality as see a card, pick a card, where people have a miscreant. It's like, well, I saved the coin for miscreant, right? Because
Mm.
if I coin miscreant, that means I've statistically won the game. Let's go. So it's just like blind, like, okay, I will do that no matter what. And like, yeah, that's okay if you missed coin 2/3 into dagger, but coin 2/3 into dagger just sets you up for such a good game. You're totally fine getting the lackeys on turn 5 instead.
Yeah,
Play
like they're
two
still
drop.
lackeys. They're still
Yep,
good. And when it
so
comes to
good.
lackeys, you have 2 of them that don't scale, that like scales with larger minions anyway. The rush one we were talking about and the evolve one. Although the evolve one on the 3-drop works pretty well too if it lives for a turn, which it usually will. But it's not like the absolute best. So yeah. So Rogue is the next one. I don't think we're gonna go too deep into the other ones, but what else has chat? I assume chat picks the hero as well that you're playing.
Yeah. They
What
do. They
else has
do.
chat been picking, and which one of those do you think like work the best? Because I
Let
think
me
this
let me
is
actually just have a look at what we have been played. What is
yeah.
statistically the next one?
Yeah, because we got
I
Priest in this tier as
guess. Yeah.
well, but after Priest, it's kind of a grab bag of different people saying different things about which class is like how good.
Yeah. So we've played every class except Druid and Warrior. Everything's been picked so far, other than those. But the classes we have the most, it's been Priests. Then I think with 3 runs, and Mage is also up there. So
Hmm.
Priest and
How have the
Mage.
mage done on
So
a 3-run sample from Twitch chat?
so the mages have been like 7 and 6,
Okay.
because I think they suffer from, especially the last draft. It suffers from not committing and not making a decision of, okay, this is what the deck is going to do. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, good card, good card, good card, good
Right.
card, and we end up with something, yeah, okay, but could have been amazing. So usually, I think the safest way to draft mage right now is to essentially emulate what I'm doing. The other classes, it's curving out and pick fireball and kill the warlocks,
Oh. Okay.
because it's such an uphill battle if you're going to try, like, to beat them fair and square, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm not going to rush you down. By all means, Mr. Warlock, let's just play a fair game where you get to play all your lackeys and all your abyssals, and somehow I'll, beat you. Whereas if you're playing a style that says, well, I'm going to hit you in the face and then fireball you, and if that's unfair, then so be it. Right? I'm not going to let you do all the nasty stuff you've got planned for this game. So I think that's the safest way, at least until Warlock gets nerfed. I think after Warlock gets nerfed, you can start to expand a bit on that and play, a slower mage, a flame strike mage, maybe even a mage where you pick some Bog Reapers and
Right.
slow it down.
So that brings
But
me to the next point, which is what happens after Warlock gets nerfed. So they're obviously going to make some bucket changes. The bucket changes will probably affect the meta somewhat, but I'm not expecting huge bucket changes because a lot of the bucket changes that we want are the bucket changes that I don't think the average players are picking into anyway. Like, I don't know that they're all picking Hogsteed. Like, yes, Hogsteed is the best card by far in that bucket. But I don't know. Is everyone picking that? Is everyone picking Scribe? I don't know that that's actually what's happening this earlier on in the meta. But the micro adjusts are definitely happening. And last week, me and Boozer were sitting here saying like, "Oh, we're surprised it hasn't happened yet. It'll definitely happen next
Yeah,
week." This week, it's
definitely.
like, okay, I guess it didn't happen this week. It'll definitely happen next week,
Absolutely this
right?
week,
Like
right, ADWCTA? Absolutely this
200% chance to happen next week now.
100% chance for nerfs. It's
So,
like with a winter forecast, right? Like we got a 100% chance of nerfs coming in next week.
so the nerf that's going to happen is Warlocks are going down, definitely.
Yeah.
That's just their win rate's way too high. Warriors are going to be brought up, definitely. Druids are going to be brought up. Although I've been arguing since the beginning of this meta that Druids are actually like one of the top classes. Their playstyle is very one dimensional, but it works on a high percent chance, I think. But still, the win rates are very low, and the win rates for average players are probably even lower than on HS Replay. So those two classes are going to get back up. So with that change, let's just assume they bring Warlock down, nothing else gets touched. They bring Druid up a little, they bring Warrior up a lot. What do you think the effect that has on the overall meta? Like, if they don't touch Hunter, will it become more powerful? If they don't touch Priest, will it become more powerful? Or,
God,
potentially, we mentioned
any
Rogue?
meta where Priest is the top dog, it's such a oh, it's so annoying. Mm, I am actually enjoying Hunter's spot right now because it doesn't care too much about the Warlocks. Um, but that's specifically playing Hunter. So
Mm-hmm.
after Warlock gets nerfed, I'm pretty bad at predicting these things, but it does feel like Priest and Mage, I think, have their moment to shine a bit more.
Yep.
It all depends on how much they're going to, if they're going to go nuts on the Warrior for micro adjusting. I'm gonna have a lot of fun playing Warrior because I already am. I'm just
Right.
building aggro Warrior, and then if they are gonna give me 2 death spites per draft, and I get to have all the other good stuff, we're just gonna hit some people in the face, and they're not gonna know where it came from.
I think that's going to happen. I mean, right now, I don't know how you're making Aggro Warrior work consistently. I've done literally 2
Oh,
Warriors.
I never said it was
Oh,
consistent.
okay.
I said I got 2 10 wins, but there were some other turns
Okay.
in between. It is not consistent, but it is fun.
I've had a lot of, well, that's not true. One run won 1 win, and my other run won 6 wins, but it was 6-1. So it was a lot of fun up until the 2 losses. But the other one just like didn't work, and they were both kind of the same kind of hit your face with the weapons aggro warrior that you're talking about, which I also think is really the only way to play warrior right now, that can function. But given those results, I think it will be adjusted really high up, and I think like aggro warrior is going to be really fun and really dominant in this meta for players who know what they're doing.
Yeah, I was about to say dominant, not so much in how much. This is the part because, like at the end of GVG, Warrior was still deemed sort of unplayable,
mhm,
and I was averaging 8+ with Warrior in GVG near the end because it was just so good if you smorked people down.
mhm.
And back then you had Arcane Golem, Leper Gnomes were 2/1s, Abusives were 2/1s, so there was a lot more support for going Super Smork. So I hope that it's a similar thing right now where the people that are willing to try it, but there won't be enough, they'll sort of keep it for themselves, right? It'll be
Right,
like, yeah,
right.
we know how to so there's not enough people that pick Warrior, but the ones that do,
Mhm.
they then don't know how to build it, so it doesn't really show in the numbers. But when you do, like, ooh, comes together, you just go 12. Like, I hope that that's the secret gem, the Smart Warrior.
I
That's
think
like the
it'll
most
happen. I think it's the same way that people are not going to pick cards that sacrifice your own minions or like give your opponents cards. That's sorry. The rabbit is doing stuff in the background. My the bunny that I actually have in this apartment, not Shadybunny, our guest here. But
little bunnies. What are they doing?
yeah. So what was I saying? Yeah,
Smork Warrior.
Smork Warrior. Because people have such like average players have such and that's where they're doing their adjustments based on. Because they have such a mental like disconnect with giving opponents stuff or sacrificing your own stuff. So that's why your banshees are so low. That's why your soldier of fortune is going to be like always move down buckets
Yep.
until it's where
Yeah.
banshee is. Um, what's going to happen with warrior is that's the same feeling when you throw a weapon to your opponent's face. You're just losing a charge. You're not getting anything, and you're not seeing lethal on the next turn, right? Like
Mm.
I think people are willing to do it if it puts your opponent to lethal. I don't think people are willing to do it before then.
Nah, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I meant like you'd be surprised how even if it sets up lethal.
Oh, people still are
um,
not willing to do it.
yeah,
Oh,
like oh, but he could taunt or whatnot.
yeah.
So
So I think people just don't do that, and if you don't do that, you don't get the success that you get to. Um,
it's also because we've just had this very long
mm,
period where it's pick Super Collider, Warpath, Dragon Roar Warrior, and you'll
and all
get
the
there.
taunts that are literally are not able to attack.
Yeah, it's it's the because I see this comment in my chat sometimes like, oh, Warrior's literally unplayable. You get 3 Warpaths, and I'm just like, well, yeah, with that mentality, it'll never work because you're trying to build something that you can't build. You're trying to build a warrior that wants Dragon Roar and Omega Assembly,
Yep.
both which are cards that are not in the current rotation. So what are you trying to do with those 3 Warpaths? So yeah, it's I think that's probably the main reason that Warrior is failing that much because I'm not gonna advertise here for Warrior, but I think if Warrior were played properly, it wouldn't be lagging this far
Yeah, it
behind,
wouldn't be
right?
50, it wouldn't be 41% win rate. It would be
Yeah,
like
it's
45,
it's doing
46.
super terrible right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Warrior will go up. I think Druid will be insane once they adjust it because I
Oh,
already
I'll have to
have
play me
Druid
some Druid, yeah,
as
because
like the tier right
it's
after
something
Warlock.
it's something you said a while back, I believe, right? Where Druid is a good metric. It's a good system for measuring sort of where you're at as a player because
Hmm.
it's such a solid class, but it's Druid isn't the oh just do this or do
Right.
that. It's a well draw your cards and see what your cards say and then play according to what the board is. And the draft is also not something you can cookie cutter do very. It's not like oh always draft this, always draft that. So I find with Druid, I tend to do okay. You just go in and make it work, but it's hard to convey that to someone, tell that to someone like, oh, make the right decisions, play Druid and make the right decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And it's going to be interesting. I do think in this meta, if druids are actually they actually get to be like very very good, and they make the micro adjust, I think people will catch on. I'm hoping because I don't think it's like this is one of those metas where I don't think it's that complicated to make a good druid. So if it becomes to the level where all the good players will be able to make the druid OP, then it'll catch on a little and get adjusted down again. But I do think in the next micro adjust, like we were talking about Warrior, I think Druid's a good candidate. You mentioned Mage and Priest because Mage and Priest have a lot of the tools to do like half of what the Warlock does. So if the Warlock goes down, then their Rock Paper Scissors is going to work a little better, and they're like next in line kind of anyway, right? Especially like Priest and on the win rates. Um, so there's a lot of candidates to not like necessarily replace Warlock's dominance right now, but to definitely get ahead. And I think we'll be seeing a more diverse meta in terms of the type of classes that are in the top tier or the second tier in the arena than what we have been seeing. Because what we have been seeing honestly is just first Rogue dominated everyone, and Warlock was like kind of second tier, and then everything was after that. And then they nerfed Rogue, and Warlock was first tier. Rogue is second tier now with a bunch of the other classes that used to be third tier. So now Warlock is going to be knocked into that tier. But I think
we're really just missing that micro adjust that lifts the others up while it gets the top guys down a bit. Because if we're just taking the top guy out, there's just going to be a new top guy every time to raise the others up at the same time without just like, all right, Warlock down. Next, who's going to be OP now, right?
Yeah, and that's Blizzard right now, right? Like, let's move on to let's get out of the current meta and the future meta and look up at our future a year down the line, 6 months down the line. Blizzard's been obviously very slow with these updates. Presumably they're going to go faster. We keep saying this, and they keep saying this. They've been really good about communicating, so we know what their intentions are. And so we know that they're failing their own intentions. So this is not a let's convince Blizzard they need to do better. They know they need to do better. They said they would do better, right? So this is they'll, at this point, none of us can help. We can't even point them in the right direction or anything because it's just an internal thing, right? They gotta figure out a way to at least either make the button to do micro adjust more easy to press, or to like just get it together and push it more frequently, or I don't know, something. I don't know what's going on. But
Especially at the start, I feel like after all the sets have been in once or twice, it'll be way easier.
yeah.
But the first times around, it'll be a little, just chaos.
Yeah, and especially when they've only done like half of each, right? Like we say we had one rebucketing and one micro adjust so far. We haven't. We had half a rebucketing and half a micro adjust. Because in the micro adjust, they specifically only move one class rogue. And they're like, the rest are coming. We don't want to contaminate the data because rogue was so overpowered. And we're like, okay, so it'll come pretty quickly, right? Because they already know they still have a problem, which didn't really happen. But it's half a micro adjust. And for the bucket adjust, rogue hasn't had any buckets adjusted yet. So although that may move rogue down and make rogue actually a bit more balanced even after they micro adjust it. I mean, after they rebucket it, because rogue is still horribly misbucketed right now on the new cards. Like, right, evil miscreant, literally everyone picks it. It's an auto pick. I don't care. Like it's a constructed level card, right? So I don't care what kind of a player you are, you're always picking it when it comes up, and it's in the top of the fourth bucket. So that's moving way up in the next rebucketing by any metric that Blizzard is going to use. But yeah, looking 6 months down into the future, do you think Blizzard continues with this system? Do you think they'll just be faster with the system? Do you think they'll get it right on the next? Because we're having a rotation a month from now. So what's the general feel of it right now?
So I think that in general, I do feel like the system will stay. And as a streamer specifically, I do like the system. That doesn't mean I like the way how they've implemented it or the way how they're managing it right now, but I do like the idea a lot because it does get a little stale if you are playing the same meta for 4 months. And as a player, like just a player, not a streamer, not a content creator, I can definitely see that, someone might say, do they really have to do this? I just want to learn the meta, farm it, right? Get some good leaderboard finishes. But now that they've moved that to, the seasonal cycle of the arena once every two months, I think it's fine even for, people that aren't content creators and that just want to play. And then we're talking just at high level, because I think for your average drafter, this is way better because they're like, hey, new cards. We love new cards. Let's do that. Let's do that twice every expansion rather than just once. So I'll start off by saying that I do like the idea and I like its potential. If they can get faster and they keep getting faster with the micro adjustments and buckets changes, like I would say that I was very pleased with how the rogue came in, like when it came in rather. If they can do that a couple of times, let's say, I think it'll take about 3 times per let's say per 2 months. Right? If they can do that 3 times in the first month, and then we have 1 month of like, oof, this feels nice. That would be good to start off with, and then hopefully near the future we're gonna have a month and 2 weeks of, oof, this is nice, right? So that's where I hope they take it. Now whether whether that's gonna happen, that's a different question.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it's because of all the stuff that had to be done around Worlds, that there was just very little attention to the arena, and that if there's nothing major on the agenda, when the next cycle rolls around, we are going to get those, let's say, 2 waves of maybe just micro adjust the top dog if it's too problematic, and bucket change the rest, and then get catch up on the second week. If we can get that, I'd be pretty happy for this next cycle. So if we got the next cycle, 2 adjustments within, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree. I think it takes 3 adjustments for them to get I think it takes them maybe 4 adjustments for them to get a new expansion right, and 2 adjustments for them to get the next rotation in, right, when they already have the expansion in. So
Oh yeah.
Whenever an expansion comes in, like it's gonna throw all because they're using stats. So when you have a bunch of cards and no one, especially because they're relying on average player data and average player pick data, not even performance data, when the average players don't know what to pick and are just picking things because it's fun, all the average players, and then also a lot of the players who are good are just experimenting with cards, right? Like you're not going to get a lot of good data in that first week on the bucketing side. So I think it's going to take a little bit longer for when an expansion comes out. But on a just rotation basis, like what's happening a month from now, I think they'll probably be able to figure it out in two adjustments. And if they can get the two adjustments in 2 to 3 weeks, then we're going to have a good like month and a half of a solid meta. Which right now, like that is such a because I'm already feeling like, okay, come on, we need something like more stable, and I know I'm gonna feel like, oh, the rug just got pulled out under me a month from now. So by the time it's 2 months from now, I'm really going to be desperately wanting a nice stable meta, and I think they can pull it off, but they do have to push that button faster. As for the world's issue, it's true. So they've all been kind of distracted with worlds happening, and if you remember last year in August, after the release of Boomsday, Blizzard kind of just like went away for like a few weeks and didn't do like anything on like Constructed, on like Arena, because that's when everyone takes like one of their vacations, I think. Like just like company wide or something. That's like,
oh wow.
it's like a general vacation time. And I don't know. I think in Europe as well as the U.S., that's like a general time when people take their vacations because people have kids. That's like when kids are right about before they go back to school. Like that's just a general popular time, right? If you work in, I don't know if Asia's like this too, but at least if you work in Europe or the U.S., you know that this is the time when everyone takes at least one of their like longer vacations.
So that's when they went like, it's giggling event there. How bad can it be?
Exactly. And Giggly Adventure was about as bad of a mistake as they've made in the history of printing cards on the neutral side, and it took them a while before they turned it into something much more reasonable. So between that and Worlds, I think they really need to like internally figure out the contingency plan for when these very very predictable events happen. Right, this isn't like a natural disaster hit Blizzard. And so, like, all their, things are offline. They can't communicate with each other. This is, like, scheduled, many months / a year / always just, like, ahead of time. So, it's not that I definitely have sympathy over, like, they're getting pulled in a million different directions and they're very busy and all of that. But Arena, if they're going to take it seriously, and especially if they're going to do this kind of very aggressive, right? Like, we're going to test our abilities to balance, ambitious project. They got to have the contingency plans in so that they're not like, oh, Worlds is happening, I guess Arena is now lower on the agenda. Like, we should be on the same level of the agenda because you had time to plan for this. Like, if we sprung all this on you today, sure, I get it, Worlds is more important than Arena, but that shouldn't be how an organization like schedules things. So I think this first serious test of that particular element of it will happen after the next expansion releases, and to see if they're able to do enough things through the month of like August and very early in September. But yeah, it's something hopefully they're
feel like we're in that initial phase right now where it's the first set with the new system. It's going to be bad, and hopefully just gets way better.
Yeah. So getting away from what Blizzard can do about that, one of the things that I'm really curious about your opinion on it, because I don't know how much I am like by myself on this and how much it's like a split thing or how much I'm just like, everyone kind of feels this way. But I think that this is the most RNG laced expansion at the top end, like where the good cards are RNG heavy, of that we have ever had. Things like Conjurer's Calling, things like all the lackeys and the evil miscreants, evil whatevers, and they're in a whole bunch of different classes. We talked about Warlock, we talked about Rogue, Priest has evil conscriptor. There's a neutral card with a lackey. Mage is a whole bunch of RNG-ness. Like, I think fundamentally this particular set would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to result in a good competitive meta, no matter what they did. So I think 2 months from now, even when they've adjusted the most to like what they want to adjust to, like I think we're still going to be in a, like, compare this to, let's say, November of last year, or like, I don't know, like March of this year. I think we're still going to be behind, even if Blizzard has done everything perfectly, or even if Blizzard does everything perfectly, and it's 2 months from now. What do you think? Do you think that this is a particularly special set when it comes to these things? Do you think this is Hearthstone business as usual, and we're kind of just in a normal set? Like,
So
where would you rank this set?
I I will say that probably the best way for this to be addressed, because I do it's it's easy to forget, right? How, how bad it was in the past. I feel like everyone always says it's like, this is the worst RNG I've ever seen in an expansion. This is outrageous.
Hmm.
Now, at some point it'll be true. So I don't know if it's the case here. I've sort of just conditioned myself to not assume that that's the case. I will say this, what we talked about before as well. Like, I hate when the RNG hits very early, or just the ridiculous cards hit early. So Evil Genius, Evil Miscreant, and to an extent Conjure's Calling as well. Those three cards are a bit of a problem because they do hit early and hit very hard. Conjure's Calling a little later, but to give you an example, I'm not sure if you've seen the clip. Turn 6, Profit for 0,
Oh
Conjure's
God.
Calling, hit 2 6s. One of the 6s is the mech guy with Death Rattle, proc a mech's Death Rattle from your hand and summon it.
Okay.
Pulled the vault from his hand as he blew it up for another Conjure's
Oh my
Calling,
God.
and then played a 0 mana Sea Giant to top it all off because he's like, "Hey, my board is full." So yeah, that was a very fun turn. So I will say that happens less than like, oh, somebody played a Lackey on turn 2, like a Lackey generator on turn 2, and now I'm gonna lose because he's got 2 good Lackeys in
Yeah.
his hand.
Yeah, no, the
Um,
early ones definitely hurt more, and that's why, like,
yeah,
to Blizzard's credit, they've done some. Like, I think they've done, like, with Potion of Madness, right? They put it in the very top half of the first bucket right off the bat, kind of eliminated it from the meta. They knew
yeah,
it was
for sure.
problematic.
I will
Um,
say they're helping a
yeah,
lot with that,
yeah.
and it's kind of a it's an it feels very off for balancing the arena, because just like, oh, just make it appear as little as you possibly can, and then we'll pretend it doesn't
But
exist.
that's
It
how it
doesn't feel
works.
like.
Think of the legendary cards. That's like what so many legendary cards are. Like,
Yeah,
imagine if
yeah.
Death Rattle is like a common card. I
It's
mean, not Death
yeah.
Rattle, Deathwing.
It Yeah, 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 for sure. And it is better than nothing, of course, right? Like, they can't just change the card. They can't
Mm-hmm.
do like super specific arena things. And I guess it's better than nothing. So I think if they keep doing that, these like very problematic early cards when they hit, if they can make them less common, because Abyssal is a really, really dumb card, but at least you can say, okay, if I'm going to play aggressive and I'm going to build a board that doesn't get wiped on turn 7, or I'm going to lower his health so much that if he does end up taking an additional 3 from Abyssal, I can win.
Right.
I like those kind of BS
Mm-hmm.
cards a lot more. They cost a lot of mana and I can prepare for them. Now,
Yep.
I think the average player doesn't care most of the time. They're like, oh, it's BS, it's going to hit
Right.
me at some point. But they haven't constructed their deck to specifically beat Abyssal.
And they
They
don't
haven't
want
really
to.
thought about it. They haven't structured their turns to
Mhm.
specifically beat Abyssal.
Yep.
And then the Abyssal hits and they're like, oh, this is so powerful. What the hell? Right? It's just like, and then they're like, well, you could have made it later on. Yeah, but the card could also not be so strong. So why would I change if I can
Right.
make them change the card?
Yeah, and especially for Abyssal,
So
it's like you could just have things with 4 health. Like, that's not the
yeah, you
hardest
could just
thing.
play that.
At 7 mana, there's a card called Flame Strike, which you need like 5 health for. So this is a
Yep,
level
yep,
below
yep,
that.
yep. Yeah, but yeah, to answer your question, it does feel worse when the RNG hits early.
Yeah.
So that is thing. So if both Miscreant and Evil Genius were very common right now, I would definitely be feeling you. Where it's like, yeah, this might be the worst thing. But I think it's because right now it's just the early Evil Genius. I
Right.
don't really see Evil Miscreant at all, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then there's a Conjure's Calling, but the Conjure's Calling, they do need that profit for it to hit very
Yeah.
early, and a
Conjurer's
lot of
Calling is
the
usually a
time,
late hit. Like,
yeah,
Conjurer's
yeah,
Calling is
yeah.
when I try to outvalue a mage, and then I realize that nope, Nope.
That won't happen. Yeah.
I do that now and then when I can't like race face with them because I just don't get aggressive enough on like I miss a 2-drop or a 3-drop or whatever. And it always is a tough road. It's not that it's unbeatable, but it is definitely way tougher than it should be.
Yeah, when you miss your curve, that's when you really are at the mercy of the game, it feels.
Mhm.
Because you're like, "Oh god." And I think then it's easier to put yourself in the shoes of the um, more casual arena
Right.
player
We're not
because they
drafting
miss their
great
curve more
curves.
often
Yeah.
and they are more at the because that's how you get the idea like, "Oh, Hearthstone is just RNG."
Mhm.
If you don't hit your curve and you're not killing these mages,
Yep.
and they're sitting there with their 5 ravens. They're like, "Well, he had 2 Caligos. How can I beat that?" It's like, "Well, kill him on turn 9." Right?
Right.
It's like, but you don't do that if you don't hit your curve.
Yeah. I think when it comes to average players, they like to draft the deck that they draft and then, have a good time with it rather than
And then
being
you
forced to
can't have a
draft a
good time with
particular
it because the
deck
mage has
because of the
infinite
meta.
value and the warlock has infinite AoE, etc., etc.
Yeah. So here's kind of where we're at. I guess we'll see, right? Because I'm optimistic that Blizzard will get the balancing down at some point before the end of before the next expansion hits, and then we'll see what the meta is with ROS in play and their other ones. Do you think so? I think we all think that ROS is not leaving for the next rotation, right?
No.
Do you think they're going to rotate back any of the expansions from the last year? Or if they're going to avoid that as well. Like I'm trying to
So,
imagine what they're doing
yeah.
for the next rotation.
I haven't done the math yet on the expansion. So,
They
like for
can.
like
There's enough room.
there's enough room. So,
There's
yeah.
from the old one. There's Karazhan, there's Blackrock Mountain, there's TGT, and there's GBG. And there's also what do you call it? The League of Explorers.
So we have Witchwood right now,
Yep.
which makes me think that they'll do Boomsday, ROS, and then some old sets.
Hmm.
That's the assumption for me. If they added Witchwood rather than just do a bunch of old sets,
Interesting. And so if Boomsday is
that's what I
coming
assume.
back, you know what Boomsday is coming back with.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's gonna be
They're
God.
gonna
What's
do it
the
for the memes. That's just what's going. That's gonna be the exciting moment, right? When
I can't even
GBG
remember.
comes
Does
back with
MechWarper say
Boomsday.
something or not? Is it just
Blizzard
like
didn't say anything. Blizzard has
some
just
mechy
said that
stuff?
rotations are happening. They didn't give us any information. They didn't even
Oh no no
promise.
no no.
Oh, sorry. What?
Never mind. I know. I was thinking of Mech Warper. I was like, God. I was thinking of his battle cry. Like, does he say anything? The Mech Warper itself, right? It was just like, can I imagine the sounds?
Oh
What's
my
gonna
god.
happen?
I mean,
I
that's
don't
that's future
expect that.
PTSD. Let's
Yeah.
not go
Oh
there
my
yet.
God. Let's go. That's like
Um,
the tavern brawl, right? With the Mech Warpers and then the guy that buffs the mechs.
Yep, yep. And for those who weren't around in GVG, all you have to know is that it's a mech-based expansion, and the mechs there were built very differently than the mechs of Boomsday. And there's one card called Mech Warper, which is a 2-mana 2/3, and reduces the cost of all mechs in your hand as long as the thing's on the board by 1 mana.
Yep. And
So
yeah.
you can imagine how the arena would look if those two sets were ever in the game at the same time. And as soon as Blizzard announced what Wild Rotation did, I think that's the first synergy sets that people jump to, and they're like, "This is gonna be ridiculous."
Like, yeah. And I
Um,
think they don't want to deny that. The people, they don't want to deny that. They want the chaos to happen.
yeah, 2 month of chaos if that happens. On the other end, the other one that would be very exciting slash terrible, depending on whether you want Arena to be skillful or memey, is what they bring some of the dragon sets back together because
Yes. Oh God.
yeah.
Like volcanic Drake
Hmm.
with just like Dragon Roar, Operative, like
Oh.
those things together. Oh my God. Like Dragon Roar into Operative, like oh no.
Operative
Just
is at least
imagine.
going to be gone for now because I think they have to rotate MSG out
They
after
should,
this.
right? Yeah.
Uh,
Just imagine it if at
oh
any
god.
point that's a thing, right? Dragon Roar into Operative. Get the dragon in your hands already. Play the Operative. Woo! And then you
Yep.
play against the other warrior, of course, and you steal his Dragon Roar, and you get to do it all over again.
So just so like everyone listening is clear, we're in a very like nice and not swing heavy meta right now when it comes to possibilities of what Blizzard can do. That doesn't mean Blizzard will actually go down any of those routes, but I think there's some demand for it among among the general population of Hearthstone players that it's gonna happen sooner or later.
They want to see the arena on fire just a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that's lit. But then not for too long because, oh
Right.
my god, guys, and it's not fun anymore. It's like, I've had my fun. I've done it to the other people. All right, let's go back to playing Yetis.
Yep. Well, we'll see. We'll see what the next one brings. I mean, I will definitely be very excited for the first 2 weeks that we're in one of these ridiculous metas, and after that, I would be like, "Hey, Blizzard, you know how you said you're gonna swing the meta around every 2 months? Can we just do this 1 month for this one? Like, you know, it's ridiculous. You know, people don't want this event meta for 2 whole months. Let's just, let's kick it up a notch on the rotations when that happens. But yeah. Okay, so final words. I think we're wrapping this up. What do you, because you've done this Twitch, bring it back to the Twitch draft thing,
Yeah.
where you've been doing Twitch draft now for almost 30 whole runs. um when you're looking at how your chat reacts to a deck that is being built, what would your advice be of when to start leaving their normal preconceived notions of how a deck should be built? Because we talked about, sometimes the
Yeah.
deck is falling apart, you need to do something and not try to get a 12 win deck and instead try to like build a 7 win deck and just be happy with it. And we talked about when the deck is like potentially be 12 wins if you can hit those certain, archetype goals or whatever, and they don't go for it and you end up with a 9 win deck. So at what point in the draft, and what are some of the markers, in general terms, if you can, that chat should be watching out for in their own drafts?
Mm-hmm. So I think a big one is just asking yourself, so how does my deck actually win? Because you have a collection of cards and you may have some kind of an idea of, oh, we're going to try to build this with this class. But then you look at your pile of cards and say, okay, how does this win? Does this win by, getting on the board and hitting them in the face fast? Does this win by stalling? Does this win by me getting more value? So if let's say 20 picks in, you have two drops. You look at the deck, the conclusion of, oh, this deck wins because it's going to hit people in the face. Well, that's a wrong one, right? Because you have two drops, you won't have the board.
Right.
So that's another question you can ask yourself: will my deck on average have the board? Yes or no? So when you ask yourself what's the deck's win condition, those are extra questions that then pop up, and then you tailor the last 10 picks or 15 picks, no matter how, wherever you are at the draft, to what you think the deck needs to do to win. So a good example was a Paladin draft we had, where the early curve did not happen, and we did not go with the standard, oh, let's just curve out and hit people in the face kind of line and maybe have a silver sword at the end. We went for let me actually just grab the deck. It's like two shovel fists and two consecrations, and it was really good that like I sort of let them in, like, all right, chat, keep in mind we're more of a control-y paladin, so we need reactive cards. So I think we had one consecration, one true silver, but then we picked a blowgill sniper, something that's also a bit more reactive,
Mm-hmm.
just all in favor of keeping you alive. And that deck went 7, and that could have very easily been a train wreck. And we've had train wrecks in the past when we didn't do this. So I guess that is the main takeaway: is ask yourself, okay, how does this deck win? And then, does my deck on average have the board? Yes or no? And then look at a card and say, Frostwolf Warlord, does this make sense? Right? Like, is my deck on average going to have the board? Yes or no? Heroic Innkeeper, while it might seem like a really bad card, like, hey, is my deck on average going to have the board at that time? Yes or no? Oh, yes. Oh, hey, suddenly not a terrible card. So yeah, that would be it.
Great. Yeah. Definitely great advice. And we will be back next week with Tex, doing more meta analysis, hopefully with hopefully with a new meta of sorts.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, 200% chance, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you so much for being here, Shady Bunny, and Shady Bunny, Twitch.tv/Shady Bunny, YouTube/Shady Bunny. Anything else you wanna talk about for other things you're doing that is besides this Twitch draft leaderboard run that I'm sure we'll see on the leaderboard. Not next month because now we're in 2 month leaderboards. So
Yes.
not until a month from now. But
No, my,
it'll.
my life is chat draft right now. That's what I do. Now I'm gonna mess around. I'm gonna mess around with that Smarky Controlly Hunter. I
Mhm.
might mess around with maybe building a little mage, especially if Warlock gets nerfed. But no, feel free to join the drafts, guys. I'll be chat drafting for at least the duration until the nerfs hit, because I don't really want to start meta testing until then.
Yep.
Other than I'm gonna have some fun with this hunter.
That makes sense. And it's
Yep.
twitch.tv/shadybunny, and you stream on for Eastern time. It's mornings through like noon.
So usually the times you'll find me online is 12 till 8 CEST,
And that's
Central
6 hours
European.
after, so that would be 6 a.m. till noon for like
Yeah,
Eastern
but
time.
then I do deviate sometimes where I'll start a little earlier or go later.
Great. All right. Well, that's it for us. We will. I'll see you next week on the Lightforge, guys. Until next week, this is ADWCTA.
This is Shady. See you guys.
See you guys.